Welcome to From the Edge. My name is Nicole Anderson, and I am your host for this podcast series. The objective of this series has been born out of conversations on the ground. All the interviews and conversations are being filmed out of our Dubai studio, and that is very metaphoric and symbolic. Right now, the region is going through quite an unprecedented set of events, but the talent, the game changers, the visionaries, the future makers are still here. This series attempts to bring these great minds and fresh voices to the table to talk through what they are doing day by day to get through these uncertain times. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be interviewing and having a conversation with Michael Clark. Michael has had an stellar career in financial services and fintech, and has led transformation, innovation, strategy, and data intelligence roles at the most senior levels in companies such as JP Morgan, MasterCard, Lloyds, and Atom Bank. Today, Michael sits here, a resident now in Dubai for circa 8 years.
It's 3, actually.
Oh, 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years, still long enough.
Yeah, still long enough. It feels like time goes quickly here, to be fair.
And he's founder of the Cognition Group. He spends his time working with leaders, investors, and government to look at the future emerging technologies, data intelligence, AI, and the like. I'm sure I've not done Michael enough credit. We are going to walk through his story and bring to life his vast experience, but more importantly, talk about some of the real topics that he's incredibly passionate about, as am I, in terms of the future of work, the role and the importance of data and its value, and how new systems are forming and certainly potentially accelerating through this uncertain period. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So, you're a hot property at the moment. Just before we got on air, you were telling me about a number of conversations that you're having, and it's no surprise, right? What a place to be in the world right now. And I can imagine someone like yourself who has spent almost your entire career from the edge looking in, couldn't be more, relevant, right? So take us through your journey. You've had such a vast level of experience working at senior levels, being able to kind of push the boundaries, and that's continued really. You're also an author.
Yep.
Tell us about your journey, where it's led to you, and why it's so relevant, do you think, here and now?
As we just get a warning now.
Oh, we get a warning.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Nothing like being timely on a podcast, right? Okay, so journey-wise, it's really funny. I think Steve Jobs said this, right? You never join the dots looking forward. You see it kind of looking backwards. Career-wise, I always say this, whether I did it intentionally or unintentionally, but I kind of ended up doing the entire value creation life cycle. Mm-hmm. Across every job that I did, I was kind of walking the line of how value is created. Yeah. Be it marketing.
This is brilliant.
This is real world. This is real world, right? This is real world. Whether it be starting life working in sales and marketing, which is the point where you bring customers into your value ecosystem, which for me was incredibly valuable because I learned to listen to senior people, but understood consumers a little bit. And then from there, I was lucky to work for a startup, which I kind of, at a very young age, worked across the end-to-end, which is really unusual. You don't get that opportunity, I think, unless people who've worked in startups will understand what I mean. I got to work literally from the sales and marketing, the world that I knew, to the point where I became a CRM consultant at a very young age. So I was kind of selling, marketing, implementing, training, and supporting at a really young age. Ridiculous, in fact, in some of the conversations I was having. But that was like a 5-year journey. Mm-hmm. So when I left, it was almost like, I'm quite ahead of certain people because of the exposure. Right. And again, I'm sure people in startups feel the same. Yeah. And the reason I left was I felt at the time I was becoming a master of none. because you're doing so many things
Yeah.
across so many industries. Well, who are you? What is your job title, right? It just became very difficult. So I left there. I think I did my only stint in public sector. But I think that was still important because then, you're following that value creation arc. And now I'm in leading teams to do development, but also now I'm the single resource for organizational design. So now I'm designing organizations. So I've gone from selling, marketing, running the cycle of value to now designing organizations and building businesses, right? And that was like an 18-month journey. That was hard because the pace of change was slow in the public sector at the time in the UK. I managed to get a job then, which was technically in financial services for the first time, which was General Motors Financial Services. Amazing management team, leadership team, probably one of the best to date in terms of vision, but also belief in the leadership, in your people, right? And growing them. I got to join, I managed the whole change life cycle for the UK and Ireland with an amazing team underneath me. But we also worked on the biggest deployment of the entire UK. So we put in place new front end system, back end, all the way through to finance and SAP. Went in time to budget, the first time in the whole of Europe, when the UK was in Europe.
When was it? What years were these?
Probably 2007.
Right.
2007.
Yeah.
And then because of the success of that, I ended up being lifted out and I re-engineered underwriting for Europe. Which then I understood the core business, if you like. That's why I'm so familiar with how a retail bank actually operates, because I understand it from the start to the end. Yeah. I ended up designing Paris Bank, Brazil, other markets. And then the call came then and I moved to JP.
Yeah.
So I was headhunted by JP one Friday afternoon, which is very strange. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a recruiter actually. And I was like, no, that's JP Morgan Direct, which was very surreal. So again, you go sales, marketing, end-to-end fintech, startup environment, working with multinational organizations, to building organizations, to managing change management, running operations, reporting into C-suite leadership, to now going to probably one of the world's biggest investment banks. That was a fascinating period to join the banking sector proper, because I joined the day after the financial crisis.
Wow.
So I lived through the financial crisis, basically. So what does that mean? It meant that the bank had no choice to change. For the first time in its history, it had to face transformation rather than necessarily just plod along. Because back then, we always joked that we could all leave and the business would still make money, right? Because the machine keeps running by itself.
Yeah.
That's not to do a disservice to the people at the front end, but the back office pretty much would run itself. So that was quite eye-opening in terms of the mechanics of how that business runs globally. I set up what was at the time probably one of the world's first design centers for business. I set up the European arm. I had a team of about 4 or 5 people. We worked on probably some of the biggest transformations in the world. To give you an idea, one of them was migrating $3 trillion of the world's money from one system to another. And redesigning the connections between the investment bank and the back office. I was in turn lifted out because I started doing more work at a firm level. So I ended up working across asset management. I designed asset management product. That's where the data piece started to take hold, because I started designing data structures within asset management, dictionaries, middle office, front office, and then the back office component. So that kind of gave me the start of the product journey component as well. Back then, the business formed into 2. There was redundancies and there was opportunity to leave. So I kind of did as like a 7-year stint then in consulting, which again, looking back, was very well chosen, my choices. Some of them were no choice because I had to for financial reasons. But as time progressed, they became, again, looking back, the right choices. I think if I look at my career, I think it's a bit like an actor who picks the right script. For some reason, I found the right scripts across every career. And when you compound them all up, they actually become relevant to the world that we're in now. And I never did that on purpose. It's just how it just formed and the choices I made and what made me make those choices.
What strikes me, and I know you're not finished, but I think what struck me immediately in our initial conversations was exactly that. You've first of all, very few people can make a move from a startup environment and then get catapulted and succeed, right, in that very drastic decision. Different operating environment, huge responsibility, different industry, but different level of politics and organizational complexity, and you've done that.
Yep.
But each move, as you say, has added to your story, like in major incremental steps, whereas sadly, most of us go for the repeat cycle, right? In a career, we relive what we've done. In fact, we push to relive what we've done. Our value, and we'll get onto this, is created on our history, right? But you've broken that mold.
Well, I had 4 rules through those, which is probably how it worked out the way it did. They changed over time because you have to, because it's just life.
Yeah.
But back then, the first rule was never to do the same job twice. Because once you know, like I think, I'm a big believer, you only learn by doing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way my brain works is once I know how to do it, I now need to move on. So that was the first rule. The second rule was, before financial services, was never to work in the same industry twice. Because then it gave me breadth.
Yeah, yeah.
As time progressed, I transitioned to depth, but I still had the helicopter view. The third view, which is really important, was never to move for money. So I never changed jobs for money. And the most important rule of all was to think 3 jobs ahead. So I didn't have a short-termism view of my choices. My view was I was creating a toolbox of knowledge, but I was applying wisdom. So as I was learning, I was applying constantly. So by the time I'd left the job, I'd already applied the things I was learning, and I had real evidence to say this works or it doesn't, which then allowed me to get the next job because I had evidence.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me talking theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
So when I kind of did then that 7-year stint, the leap from JP, there was a bit of a kind of, it could have got a sliding doors moment, if you like. I was offered the chance to work for Microsoft in Redmond, a director role. I remember flying there for 24 hours or 48 hours, I forget. It was a blur. I think I had 10 interviews in the space of those 48 hours. I got the job, but back then Obama had before Obama increased the visa cap, it was quite small. It was like 46,000. It leaped to about 100,000 back then. But before that happened, it was full, and they wouldn't allow me to work from the UK like I did for JP and commute. I had to move, so the job fell through. So I come back to the UK market. I go, okay, what do I do for a job now? Because my mindset back then was the corporate mindset of, I need a job and get paid, and that's how it works. And I got back then when we actually got recruiters who spoke to us, and there were such things as job boards and things. A recruiter rang me and said, look, we've got this opportunity, but it's a consulting role. Would you be interested? Yeah. And it was actually helping to turn the Royal Mail from a public company to a private company. Oh, private public, I forget the way around. But anyway, I got the chance to work on that, and that was fascinating. Again, that got me deeper into more strategic work. And
that was, what angle were you coming in there?
Technology strategy that underpinned it.
Right.
There was a new parcels and a new parcel tracking system that went in, but also then aligning some of the business components in terms of how that strategic shift and business direction would play out.
Yeah, yeah.
So worked on that for a short period of time, then transitioned to Lloyd's, headed up what was digital business design for a really short period of time. Worked on consolidation of platforms as part of the digital transformation, because at the time that was the UK's biggest transformation, probably globally, behind probably just BBVA, probably, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Did that, and then got the job then in which I still to this day actually credit that job a lot, which was a Nationwide Building Society as a consultant. I was there probably the longest a consultant could be legally, about 4 years. But boy, did I get to do a lot. Yeah. I got to do, open banking was created during that period of time. So I got to help write the strategy for open banking for a CMA9 bank, basically. Wow. But not how to comply, but how to compete.
Right.
So this is not compliance. This is how do you take advantage of what this opportunity brings.
Right.
Based on that strategy, we ended up setting up an entire business unit and designing the first open banking products So one of them was launched, one of them wasn't, unfortunately, because of budgetary cuts.
Yeah.
I got to reboot the innovation lab, API strategy, data strategies. The other big one I managed to do was I wrote the entire future branch operating model for the entire UK and Ireland, which was rolled out, which is for every single branch in the UK and Ireland. So when that came to an end, again, you look back on your life, which I did, and this is about choosing the right script.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what the next script was going to be. I knew two things. Open banking was going to be a thing. I'd been exposed to it. I understood it. And then the second thing that I knew, there was only one thing missing from my resume: building a product for real and owning a P&L. Because unknown to me, I was on a CEO journey, because I'd literally gone from the point where value is created to the way then value is distributed.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, why don't I get a product job then?
And just to say, again, very interesting that, like, if you take the open banking example, bar none, the UK open banking project has been the most successful open banking, I guess, ecosystem. You know, I'm talking outside of typical financial institutions, but that API ecosystem is the most successful globally, probably. I mean, you know, having worked in other parts of the world, there was always the North Star that was the UK in the model. And so being part of such an important part of shaping that success, again, fascinating. I'm just, like playing back my kind of, I guess, interpretation of what legacy essentially you could have left in some shape or form. But sorry,
Well, yeah, then it's interesting you say that. I've got to become friends with the man who was appointed by the Prime Minister to actually build it. So I now know some of the things I always assumed, but it was nice to get it confirmed, some of the things we would have done differently too.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. But the MasterCard job came along.
Yeah.
Can you build our first open banking product? Which was really ambitious, right, at the time, because traditional payment network transitioning into the unknown.
Yes.
In a way, I was an entrepreneur.
Yes.
There was only 3 product managers, one of them being me, and a really small team with a drip-fed budget. So I literally took a PowerPoint presentation to a fully blown product in 6 months.
Wow.
And turned that part of the business agile for the first time.
Wow.
Proper agile. So we went from a company that would release software every 6 months to every 15 days to 30 to live. If I was allowed, I could have gone live every day. Our first customers were Lloyds and Tesco. Ironically, the same use case, which was paying your credit card bill with open banking rails. At the same time, I got invited to be part of the PSD2 Next Generation Building Group task force for all of Europe.
Right.
So I was responsible for designing all the APIs for Europe.
Wow.
I also helped design the refund API for the open banking ecosystem in the UK.
Okay.
But as part of my job, I had to understand every open banking API around the world.
Yeah.
Because we would translate that into our product, basically. When I left, I discovered that infrastructure powered at least 80% of all of UK payments for open banking.
So where did your VocalLink experience come in?
So VocalLink was actually where I sat.
Oh, okay.
So because what we built was infrastructure, so MasterCard acquired VocalLink,
yes,
which gave them the I guess, access to the payment infrastructure of the UK for how people get paid. And many people don't realize that, my father included, ironically. So because of the nature of the product we were building, which was basically a single connection to every open banking API in the world for a fintech, a bank, or a startup, whatever, it made sense for it to be there because that was a business born out of infrastructure, which was actually a brilliant decision because it gave me access to people who not only understood that world, but also how to document it. So that's why it lived there. And there was a transition when I was there, when I eventually became, on paper, officially a MasterCard employee.
Right.
Because I joined as they were transitioning as MasterCard people.
Gotcha.
So that's the VocalLink connection.
Right.
Me being me, once I kind of built that and done it, I was like, okay.
What's next?
I can't sit here and roll out features. I kind of got to do something else. So I got picked up so MasterCard at the time, now this has changed since I've left, had an innovation consulting business. So they have innovation in the business, which drives the direction of the business and does a great job. But then there was an arm of the business then that helps our customers innovate.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And provide services to them. So I kind of played two hats, which was CIO, CTO for them, for emerging product. And also to a degree, for a certain period of time, I was also helping shape product.
Right.
So I helped design bank as a service and various other bits for them. And then around that time, it's kind of how I ended up leaving, actually. I wrote a paper on the future of data until 2035 because I was asked to. Now, you need to remember, this was the time of the metaverse.
Yes.
And there was a real big question, even though we'd been promoting the metaverse for a very long time internally. Right. Some great work from internal teams. It wasn't really mainstream, right?
No.
And then as soon as Facebook changed their name, the phone rang off the hook, right? It was like constantly ringing, can you come and tell us about this? So we wanted to understand, well, what does that mean for data when the physical and the virtual worlds actually start to blend? So that's kind of where I started seeing an economy emerge, and it was quite scary. It was like, wow. It's like those moments, I'm sure, when people write songs, not to compare it to that, but when the hairs stand on your arms because you know you've discovered something or you know you're seeing something. I was really lucky because my boss at the time allowed me to speak about it. So the irony was it didn't really land internally, but it landed really well with clients because it touched on a nerve that they were all struggling with, but also thinking about, but didn't necessarily have direction. So it kind of gave me a universal platform, but also a platform with our clients.
And when you say clients, obviously MasterCard has, an array of clients. I mean, the metaverse kind of period, let's call it that, phase, it was it is surreal as a concept. And fundamentally, as you said, it hit a nerve because its potential was so incredibly, exciting. And, once, I know certainly here in this region, in the UAE, people were really experimenting within guises in certain industries like retail. But it was, it was also, you could argue, the forerunner to everything embedded, right, in financial services. But at the time, I'd imagine there would have been those that would have been very curious as customers, and those that had roadmaps with the ability to execute on something as bold as this. So where were you spending your time with what kinds of your profile of customers, industries?
So I positioned this, I do the same thing with AI, by the way. To me, this was just the next phase of a company's digital transformation. And you kind of meet people where they are, right?
Yeah.
So some people would be exactly where you're describing, which is kind of at that point where they're in a position to do something.
Yeah.
Because they've transitioned legacy, they've moved the business along, structurally the business has changed, technically it has too. For them, it's just the next logical step. For others, it's a million miles from where they need to be. Yeah. Because they may not even have a strategy. If they have a strategy, they may be halfway through the transition.
Yeah.
So it's really more just curiosity and, tell me about this, just so I need to understand my plans, right?
Yeah.
For the ones that were ready, and again, you need to be mindful of what we mean by the metaverse, right? We don't necessarily mean, Halo or Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
What we mean is maybe some of the metaverse type capability that can sometimes also be brought into the physical world. Examples being digital humans in branches. That was a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We sold a lot of those. And if you're familiar, if you go to London Heathrow, you will see a digital human immediately when you catch the train. It's the projection of a worker telling you about the trains and where you get on. So they have become more pervasive. The metaverse, many people think has failed. I don't think it has. I just think it was a timing thing.
Yeah, timing.
Right?
Yeah.
Google Glasses also never failed.
Yeah.
Never failed.
Yeah.
They just failed with consumers.
Yes.
They made millions in industry.
Yes.
They made millions in logistics. They made millions in healthcare, but they weren't ready for consumers. Yeah. Fast forward today, Meta Glasses now is selling out because people are now mature enough and they're ready for it. The metaverse isn't dead. It's just reforming.
Yeah.
And getting ready for the next push, which AI will be part of.
Yeah.
So, It was a mixture of customers. Obviously, it won't surprise you. A lot of them were in the banking sector and financial sector. A lot of them saw it as a way of rebooting the branch and making it more relevant, more engaging. We saw a lot of interest from retail, food, right?
Yeah.
But then there were already people doing amazing stuff. Like Walmart trains all their staff in VR, right? So even Accenture and people like that trained all their staff in VR. This is a fallout of COVID, by the way.
Yeah.
This desire to train people remotely just transitioned to virtual environments. Because what was kind of obvious was the logical use cases for the metaverse in a business environment were new staff onboarding, particularly for companies who have a global footprint.
Yeah.
And their training facilities are in another part of the country or even another part of the planet. The cost of bringing someone is really expensive.
Yeah.
But if I can virtualize that, and I can do the onboarding and everything else with that and manage risk, that's a use case because it's safe. I don't expose it to consumers, but it's also highly profitable because I save money on the top line, right?
And I guess this is a theme throughout any innovation cycle, however short or long it is, by definition, is the timing of adoption, that classic bell curve. All the attention goes on, the kind of early adopter phase because it's dramatic, it's new, it's exciting, but God, it's terrifying, right? Then there's this, kind of phase of consolidation and what does this mean? And let's bring it down to practical terms. And then there is this adoption, phase where I think what you've touched on there is some of the many qualities, but that adoption phase is often triggered by non-threatening, measurable return.
Yeah.
And when you get that right, then the technology fits. The timing just clicks.
Well, it just becomes invisible, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you want. At the moment, AI is too visible.
Yeah.
It'll get to a point where it'll become invisible. By that, I mean, we don't look at it as technology. It's just part of day-to-day life.
Yeah.
It's almost like the underlying thing that makes it work is governed so well, works so well, I don't even think about it. And we're not there yet.
No.
We're kind of getting close to a consolidation phase.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it leads, which touches nicely into what I ended up doing. So when I left then that innovation area, internal mergers, as anybody in corporate life will understand, everything changes constantly. This was kind of good. So I ended up heading up digital transformation and strategy consulting globally. But because of the paper and because of the public speaking, I also took on a role that was never really official, but it kind of became a thing. I became a C-suite advisor globally on the future of technology, the future of money. The future tech covered AI, emerging technology. But the important thing is I was speaking to the board and C-level. So I advised central banks around the world. I advised CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, not so much CIOs actually, but more primarily people who ran the company or at least were in a position of authority and decision-making strategically. Because to be fair to them, all of them were getting noise thrown at them constantly and not one person coming to them could tell them why. Or they could even tell them the impact of doing this. It was just a case of, we have to do it because, hey, everybody else is, right? That doesn't really work commercially. And the reason I'd like to think I was the one thrown into the fire was because I came from industry. I was never a consultant. So 90% of the time, I could say I've been where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether it be building a product and trying to commercialize it, whether it's trying to shape a strategy and understand the investment it takes and the complexities, but also the second and third order effects of your choice.
And the organizational design.
Correct.
Aspect.
The organizational design that goes around that, commerciality and everything that comes with it. And then, oh, by the way, one piece I left out, when I was a consultant, I also became an advisor / partner in a service design agency, which was really important in my career journey because then I was able to design a business from the outside.
That wasn't Moven, was it?
No.
No, okay.
But yeah, I got the chance to work for, in that consulting period, while at Lloyd's actually, and Brett's a good friend now, I got to work at Moven, which was probably the world's first PFM at that point, or financial wellness as it was known. Yeah. And I also got to design, just after I left Nationwide, the strategy for the world's first blockchain implementation in a bank, which was Atom Bank.
Right.
But the customer piece is so important because then if you layer that stack, I've done the end-to-end of value, but I've also understand value from those layers. I understand value from the context of customers. And I don't just mean your typical customer. Developer can be a customer. Anybody can be a customer, as far as I'm concerned. I also then understand the business, product development, and organizational design centered around delivering to customer. The product then that gets exposed to them and what that means, but also how you sell that product to others on a B2B and what they want and what they need, how they manage risk. And then also then the technology that underpins it. And then I understand regulation because one thing I did in GMAC is I helped turn them into a bank because I seem to have this pain in my career. I lived through the fact that we had to become a bank to get TARP funding. So this was back in the day when there was the financial crisis. We needed the money the only way to get the money from the US government and the TARP was for us to become a bank.
Okay.
So I had to make them all Basel compliant and everything else so we could physically become a bank. And that takes me to present day. So there's this whole life cycle of value. I guess the lesson is choosing the right scripts, knowing when to leave, but also trying to make impact.
Yeah.
And not just doing the job for money. It's how do I make impact and how do I deliver something meaningful, but also then put that knowledge back in the head. So then every job I go to now, or every client I work with, be it on helping them grow their product if they're a startup or a bigger entity, whether it's an investor trying to choose the right emerging tech to back or whether their portfolio is imbalanced, whether it's a government trying to respond to AI or figure out regulation, or whether it's a business understanding whether their strategy is fit for purpose or how to redesign their organization, I'm just picking the right tool from the box. All I need to understand is context.
Yes.
The tools are there. It's just which ones to apply under what circumstances. But the key thing is meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in a different place.
Yeah.
And that's what that journey has taught me, is that every industry I went in, all the mechanics are exactly the same. Wherever you work, it's just that they're at different points. They're either at the beginning, they're further ahead. Like I couldn't go from a different paradigm. I went from an environment in JP Morgan where I could have any piece of software I wanted because there was 3 or 4 versions of it, to the Royal Mail where they had none of it.
Yeah.
But theoretically, it's still an organization.
Yeah.
It's just a different point in time with a different set of strategies, a different purpose, and a different set of capability.
Yeah. And again, from that edge, from that vantage point, you are probably, in a very small kind of Venn diagram of opportunity meets talent, but also the ability to execute in ways that, break boundaries, potentially are kind of push boundaries, but take people along. Because, we've all seen people, we've been in fintech round about the same time. I don't know how we didn't kind of bump into each other, but we didn't. But we had the whole skinny jeans, drinking Kool-Aid, Shoreditch, love them, coming into kind of boardrooms. You've got your Shoreditch look on today. No, I'm only kidding. And that had a place. When fintech exploded, around about 2012, 13, really exploded in London, you suddenly had jeans and skinny jeans, like everywhere around the boardroom. But it kind of got a little bit out of hand, I think. And, no names mentioned, but I personally had a couple of really interesting experiences where you could see tensions in rooms where this kind of new blood was forced into kind of institutional thinking. And you said it many times already in this conversation about meeting people where they need to meet. If you don't do that, you get nowhere.
But the other problem, you've touched on something there though. So there's 2 parts of the problem that emerged during that time. So the incumbents thought that if I give everybody a cardigan and a pair of trainers, we're now digital.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is they looked at these startups and went, well, we can do that.
Yeah.
But they didn't change the culture, right? Part of the transformation was never the technology.
Yeah.
Of course, it plays a part because you have to unpack legacy and you have to put the new environments in place. But you also have to redesign the organization. And that doesn't necessarily mean putting people in different seats.
Yeah.
And now today you're digital.
Yeah.
It's also the culture and how you make change.
Yeah.
The things you put in place, the things you remove that are no longer relevant. I'll give you an idea. I'm not going to say the company, but I had an experience where we were onboarding a startup and they gave them the procurement documentation that they would give to SAP.
Yeah.
Right? And they're looking at me going, I can't fit any of this in because we haven't got any of this. So they don't even have the concept of a light onboarding for a startup where we don't even think we're going to do any business with them, but we want to use them to trial our ideas.
Yeah.
Because it's a fast way and we can white label it. It's great for them because they get visibility. Great for us because it's low risk.
Yeah.
But the time to onboard them was ridiculous and what security wanted and risk. So back then, I would even argue it's probably similar today. It hasn't changed that much.
No, I don't think it has.
So now we're shifting into a world which is going to fundamentally turn industry upside down, but we're still holding on to outdated things. And part of the problem is we've also got the wrong people in the wrong seats on the bus in certain circumstances. So that whole skinny jean culture, I'm with you completely. But it worked the other way, right? I'm now seeing it emerge again in the AI and I would call the Web3 world is you've got people launching products, and I would really talk to the ones that are building B2B, not necessarily B2C. They have no experience of what an enterprise business expects a startup to have in place. The second thing is all of the presentations are in technology language. Nothing is in buyer's language. Nothing is what I would call a product. It's a piece of technology masked as a product, but it doesn't have any of the characteristics of a product. So it works both ways. You've got a culture that's not changing enough in line with what to make this technology a success. On the flip side, you've got the people bringing the new stuff are struggling to articulate it and are struggling to understand how to commercialize it, but also what these businesses expect. Which is almost where the loggerheads start to meet, because neither side communicates and understands what either side is struggling with. And
that's in times where, let's say, traditional times or, normal circumstances, business as usual, you layer in where the world is going and where the world is and how we're living now, and we'll get there. But brilliant. I think that first of all helps me, kind of bring to life more of put meat on the bone, so to speak, of some of the kind of topics I wanted to kind of work through with you, but also really has made me think of a few things and certainly will embellish the conversation for the audience. So we could go a number of different directions, but I think there's no best starting point. I think we've got to touch on culture and we've got to touch on the future of work, because I know you're deeply passionate about that. We've got to touch on what you define as essentially new economics, all right? And I'd love to, whether it's part of that or not, is look at the aspects of where you see like the organizational culture shifting, landing, evolving, and as you say, how do we take advantage of both the external environment and some of it is out of our control, like we face today, especially in the city we both live in now. How do we use that to advantage? So coming back, so maybe we can touch on you've spent time in financial services and fintech. The promise of fintech was disruption, financial inclusion, shifting of the power and the balance of power to the consumer. Gone are the banks. We had all of that. We all bought that. I bought that. I was like, that's why, fantastic. But more profoundly, that didn't happen. But there's a bigger, richer experience for customers,
there's more
consumers,
choice, right?
Exactly. I would argue that overall, I would say financial literacy has increased. I mean, most people have got accessibility now to better banking products. They understand them more. There's more access to liquidity and, funding potentially and lending products. And people understand financial products perhaps a little bit more. And competition is always a good thing. But it's much more profound than that from your perspective. Because of your experience, you've begun to think about future economic models, right? This is a big topic, okay? So let's start somewhere on this and let's see where it goes. But it's fascinating, especially as we look at the geopolitical environment we face now, where we are seeing a shift of global power and we are seeing a shift of macroeconomic power. So where should we begin this conversation?
It's funny. So I wrote something the other day, and it ties into geographical structure. It feels like, and it felt like this before all of this happened, there was a greater push for sovereignty. Now, at the time, that sovereignty was more so, I think, around more of a technology discussion.
Yeah.
It was more around data centers,
my data,
AI and various other bits, which I think was driven by the race for chips and compute. Definitely. And which markets were holding not the world to ransom, but holding the crown jewels, right? So that was kind of a message in the sand. And also we had geopolitics even before the world we live in today, which I think made people think. Now, what's super interesting out of the time we live in now, I think we're starting to see sovereignty become accelerated, almost a bit like COVID accelerated digitization, right? Before COVID, none of us could work from home. It was deemed impossible.
Looked down upon.
And within 3 days, we were working from home and we had all the technology we'd ever need. Right? Yeah. So that debunked that theory very quickly. The biggest challenge post-COVID was getting people to come in, ironically. Now we find ourselves in a situation where, again, people are working from home, which, again, thankfully, that digitization has made that possible and at least made people feel safe. But I think this is making people rethink where their risk is. So we're seeing a lot of countries globally very reliant on other nations for day-to-day function, which for many people they don't realize until the economics bite in terms of cost of energy, cost of food, all these things.
Or data centers being targeted.
Exactly, right. So what you're seeing, but also even before this, there was the emergence of what I would call selective globalization, where countries choosing who to partner and trade with versus the world that we've known for maybe the last 20 years, which is open markets, right? Everybody trades with everybody. We have an open market, etc. What's now happening is, well, I'll only trade with you, or we'll trade with this block and we'll trade with this block. What's interesting, and this has kind of gone under the radar a little bit, the EU have created their own payment system. In the middle of sanctions, Russia created their own payment network, right? So you've got a European bloc creating their own payment structure. You've got nations now thinking about where does energy get created from to remove reliance. So you've got payments, I've got energy, I've got food potentially traded within a bloc. You've got the UK thinking of rejoining the EU, which speaks to the fact that, again, more powerful in a bloc than in isolation, mainly from a trading partner. Does this now say, in the years to come, economically, do we see at the heart of this being trust? And then our nations holding on to certain things and only trading surplus? So it feels like that out the back of this, will we start to see an acceleration of nations now becoming less reliant on other nations just because of the risk factor economically? And also, this isn't just the only, there's this new term that I recently read about, which is like this poly financial, right? We're heading into a model where there could be multiple financial issues all merging at the same time.
Right.
We got private credit, which is a huge problem.
Yeah, huge.
In terms of the funding of a lot of the AI. We even got JP Morgan, ironically, offering people to short that market, even though they also fund the market.
Yeah.
You've got the energy crisis that we see now. You've got the AI component in terms of jobs and everything else, all potentially hitting at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
So I think probably for the first time, we're going to see an economic shift in terms of how global markets work together and how trade is done.
So you're saying it's less of, the global South against what we traditionally know as the West, right? It's more, it's probably more pockets or clusters of mini economies or nation economies working together in tighter kind of relationship, economic ties and trade, either because of proximity or because of predominantly, I think what you're saying is a resource-based exchange.
And trust.
It'll
come down to trust.
And trust.
It'll come down to trust. And maybe shared ideology, right? So it'll come down to trust and shared ideology and various other pieces. Like where even the Strait of Hormuz now, it's based on trust, right?
Yeah.
Who goes through and who doesn't, based on a number of factors.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there from a politics standpoint, but you see it outside of that in other markets.
Yeah.
Where the EU trade, there's an entire new payment network where other banks are onboarding too. It's this independent, I put it down to very simple risk management.
Yeah.
All this is about is global risk management. And you have to look at it that way, because what surprised me and probably many people is in just 6 weeks, the impact on the global economy.
Unbelievable.
Which shows how good and how bad that global model was.
Yeah.
Because for certain goods and services, we became highly dependent on other markets. And I've no doubt probably governments around the world now are not scrambling how to deal with this, but then say, well, how do we not get here again?
How do we not get here again? I mean, I have to pinch myself multiple times a day, being where we are physically located, right like in the eye of the storm, so to speak. But a big part of me is very excited, which is probably talks to either my risk appetite or sort of, ability to kind of abstract for whatever reason. But I think that's an entrepreneurial gene we share.
But I would say in years to come, I've never written about this, but I'm tempted. Dubai is an example of the power of digitization. When you digitize an entire economy, I'm not going to include defense systems and things like that. I'm talking about when everything is connected, look what can be done.
Yeah.
Look at the communication we had at the start of the podcast. Which is done by area.
Yeah.
So some people will not have got that because it doesn't affect them, right? So, but that was turned on like immediately, right? And then on top of that, all the data collected within the economy is understood to track supply chains and everything else.
Yeah.
Like that's light years away from some countries.
Oh,
but it shows you the power of connectivity and true digital change.
Yeah.
And hopefully the history books will show, look, if you actually stop getting to a place where your data is not disconnected and disjointed, your technology is connected and all parts work together, you can not only build trust in your economy, but you can keep it going, which is really, really powerful.
Oof, this is, my brain is kind of clicking through because, that 5-letter word, trust.
Yeah.
So many ways you could spin that story. So just on the digitization piece, being able to connect, citizens, resident citizens, people that are living here and choose to live here, has, without that digitization capability, would have potentially led to, who knows? I mean, social discord, hysteria, mass exodus. We've had some attrition, but nothing like I think it could have been. There is a huge level of trust in the system, more so than any other, government we can speak of, and we're not, that is something most people here repeat over and over again. And then, of course, there is that onward value of what the UAE represents in the future world. Okay, where does it sit in this kind of economic smorgasbord? Does it retain its golden era of being, and hopefully it's not an era, but this kind of mecca for everything that has ambitious innovation at the top of the agenda? Does it engender more trust because of what it's been able to achieve when really stressed? Does that make its quotient, does it elevate its quotient and value in the world economy? We hope so. But at the very least, it does symbolize something about transition through major difficulty, something about, as you put it, the power of innovation when put to work under strain, how that can be so important. So we'll touch on Dubai because this is where we live, but talk to that in terms of this future, kind of the future economic models.
Yeah.
I know you're so elegant with your phraseology, and this is a subject you spend all your time on, but like, where are we going to potentially if we talk about these clusters, these economic mini power bases, and the way in which trade is likely to play out? What does that transition look like from where we are today? And who's winners, who's losers? How do you balance risk? What does that look like in the next 2 years?
If I had a crystal ball. I think part of it is dependent on how this all ends, if you're being honest. Because that acceleration will come out of this in terms of where that leads and what opens up as a consequence. Look, for countries to go the way we are, there's design, which kind of they're all working on. The implementation is something different because we know how long trade deals take to sign. Yeah. Or you only got to look at Brexit and how long it took to. You can argue, was that competence versus complexity? We won't go there. So those deals have to be done. If we take aside what those structures look like, we have to revert back to where does the economy need to go? Because the classification of the economy itself has changed very little since the 1960s, right? A lot of the early foundations are still 250 years old. They've only been incrementally added to over time, i.e. the concept of wages was added at a certain point. The concept of labor.
What constitutes GDP.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So all of these were cumulatively added off the back of GRP, became GDP, et cetera, et cetera. So we are at a point now where, even look at regulation as an example, it almost feels like 21st century governance with 24th century technology, right? So, but then at the same time, you've got economic measurement systems that don't fit the real world, right? So GDP is a great example because it's dependent on human output, right? We're moving to a model where the machine will be the equivalent of an employee. So how do you measure that in a GDP world, right? The other problem is we can't measure intangible assets when most of the world is intangible. So even on a balance sheet financially, intangible assets are nowhere to be seen. An accountant will ask you, what treatment would you like me to apply to this? Which means, where would you like me to put it? Because there's no home for it. On top of that, we have something today that didn't exist in the industrial model, which is value extraction. That didn't exist in industrial. You had value extraction from a machine and a human extracting something, iron ore or whatever, and then turning that into value. Value extraction today is people consenting to services and data being extracted and sold, but never distributed or accounted for. So you have another means of value creation which isn't represented anywhere in the economy.
Yeah.
So you've got a point now where we've got the concept of labor is fragmenting. The concept of how value is created is vastly different. The concept of how value is recognized and measured economically is no longer the same. Yet we are carrying on if this is just another piece of technology. That's really not what this is. I've always believed this is a catalyst moment to finally reclassify the economy. And some of it will require new pillars to be created. Some of it will require evolving the original pillars that shaped it. Labor, state, all of the original markings economically just need reclassifying. And I say just, but they need to be agreed upon. And then they need to be incrementally changed to reflect the world that we're moving into. Because the danger is it's like square pegs in round holes, right? It doesn't fit. It doesn't logically, it's going to fudge things. Like, for example, you cannot measure the impact of technology economically. It's impossible because the human is still tied to the GDP measurement. So we still treat it like equipment or a tool that the human would use to drive an output.
We can measure productivity.
Correct.
But
but the concept of productivity is changing massively. And on top of that, I know we're going to talk about the future of work. We've also got an outdated work model, and we keep trying constantly, which why all of us, I'm sure listeners who are in a corporate world will understand, that's why we constantly have reorgs, right? Because we're trying to figure out how to keep pace with our cost base that's going up and down. And the only way to deal with that is to lean the organization out, and eventually you have to grow it again because we don't have enough people. We have too many people, and then we cut it again, and we just go through this constant contraction. Whereas we're not really addressing the root causes. The people are really the liquidity, right? They're the value.
Exactly.
We're just not structuring the organization the right way. So this is like a perfect storm economically. And then on top of that, then you've got all these geopolitical structural issues. So I've got an economy that is not failing, but well, you could argue it is from a debt perspective, but from a structural point of view, is not prepared for the world we're about to lead into. And on top of that, you've got economic headwinds, which are also going to challenge the existing economy. And on top of that, you've got a reforming of a geopolitical and a geostructure of trade. And the concept of what is traded will also be changing. Because right now we think of trading, we think of fish and bits and pieces. In the future, it'll be units of intelligence and various other bits and pieces. And I don't mean CIA intelligence. I mean things that are generated from a machine that add value to an economy or to an individual.
Well, you just, before we go there, because that's like another massive pillar, but just before we go there, and I think it is the segue, is you've talked about basically the mechanics of value in terms of what we see as value for a market, for an economy. And we've got to get measurement and the assumption of value, that's got to change. But if, for example, we draw that down and we say, pick a country, Poland. Okay, Poland does that. They are just forward thinking, they're like rewrite how they essentially look at, output from their country, strong manufacturing base, and they have new mechanisms, new metrics to look at value. Within the context, this can only be workable if a bloc undertakes the same exercise, so that everyone is effectively working within a new paradigm of units. So this is very interesting. You talk about headwinds, but maybe the pressure points we're seeing are actually tailwinds, and if they are, where's your bet going to be? How do you get these clusters to actually align? Talk about these economic clusters. Is there a potential for these clusters to actually realign economic measure?
Yeah, it's funny. So I did a piece for the Azerbaijan news agency because I did a talk at InMerge, and they asked me to write for it on the economy. And it's fascinating how certain regions are now positioning themselves as hubs, almost like a hub and spoke.
A bit
like Dubai. It becomes a hub, and then spokes around it are just access points.
Yeah.
And regions to partner with, maybe to license things or to share.
Yeah.
Azerbaijan is an example of that, where they could become a hub.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a hub and spoke.
Yeah.
So I've always believed that we're transitioning to a world of ecosystems, not necessarily. So it's not necessarily who's in control, it's what you bring to the party and how big is that ecosystem. It's a bit like Apple, right? Apple own the ecosystem, so you can either play in their ecosystem or be part of it or own a piece of it.
Yeah.
It could be a bit like that. But I think, look, this is a journey. Like if you think about how long it took from Adam Smith to where we are, that's 100 odd years. We don't have that time frame. But there's certain things we can do to compress that time frame, because you don't take on the elephant in one go. You just break up the pieces that you can. So this is about incrementally evolving the economy.
Yeah.
This is not ripping it up and throwing it in the bin, because all the terms and everything else completely are valid. It's just the classifications within it and how we apply them and how we use them. Like everybody bashes capitalism. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
It doesn't exist. For what it was defined as is not what it is today.
No.
Right? There's no such thing as a free market as defined by capitalism because it's owned by a number of companies.
Yeah.
And there's also no thing as fair market price, because fair market price demands that either side don't know as much as more than each other, which is not true, particularly in the world of technology and platforms. So I think we've got to get it out of our head that we've got to get rid of capitalism, because we don't even know what it's called.
Yeah.
It's like a hybrid. It's like a mishmash of all these different things of what we've ended up with. Whatever that is, that's what we need to unpack. But that's just a mechanism. That's not necessarily the economy that underpins it and the frameworks and the foundations that have been built up over time and suddenly stopped and didn't evolve. Like, I get really frustrated when I see things like the digital economy. It's not an economy. Nor is the knowledge economy, to be very pedantic. Because what's only changed is the unit of exchange. The way we measure the economy and what defines an economy has not changed.
Yes.
All we're describing with each other is, well, I'm now going to exchange something with you digitally.
Yes.
And that's going to drive economic growth.
Yeah.
But it's not going to change the way I measure economic growth.
Yes.
It's not going to change the way that I define those elements. That's what we're really talking about, because that's why AI is so fundamental, because it's challenging so much. It's not replacing workers, it's going to work alongside them. So it's not a machine anymore. In some cases, it will be the worker, which then messes the whole GDP measurement. And on top of that, what does that mean for an organization where job titles are important, but abilities are far more important? And what does it mean for human resources? We've seen Microsoft get rid of human resources department. Well, that's not the answer either. Because the question is, well, what does human resources need to become? The first thing is get rid of that word. And make it about human capability. Or workforce capability and intelligence would be a better name. Right? Because that includes AI and people. But now you're saying, well, my people are liquidity. So how do I grow their capability so then my competitive advantage will be the people that can work with AI? Because then I become twice as valuable. It's not about firing people. It's about augmenting them and growing their ability so you become twice as competitive. Which is why this is weird transition right now. Is everybody's firing everybody, because it's a bit like what happened in the workflow days, right? We're old enough to remember business process automation. Well, we don't need anyone. We'll just make workflows, right? And then all of a sudden, people realize, oh yeah, those people are quite clever and they know a lot. We should get them back, right? And that's where we're at now.
We are.
Oracle fire however many people.
20,000,
Guarantee in 18 months they'll be hiring again. Right? Because they're going to realize the people that need to interpret those models don't exist anymore because you got rid of them.
So you talk about liquidity and talent and how that is essentially liquidity. Liquidity in my mind visually also implies fluidity, right? And I think the two go together. If the fluidity in organizations, countries, borders, economic clusters, if the fluidity is there within obviously constructs, then you create greater liquidity. You can organize yourself around these new models. And I do think it'll be very interesting to see, like we've always seen, smaller countries with lower regulatory friction or the need to kind of reinvent. These are the countries that I think are going to be the test beds.
Moldova as the example.
Exactly.
So I did a talk for MasterCard recently in Moldova, and I have affinity with the place because that's where my development team was for my product.
Right,
so
right.
I kind of have a soft spot for Moldova, and the people are amazing as well. But I spoke about new revenue models in the economy. So again, when I talk to C-level, whether it's a talk on stage, whether it's at a boardroom, it's never the what. I'd like to give them the how, because they need to know, right? Because they're not asking you to speak just to tell them what things are. Otherwise, they're going to go, that was a lovely talk, nice some coffee, now back to work.
Yeah.
But they didn't learn a lot.
Yeah.
You kind of want to give them the mechanics.
Yeah.
So that was actually a request from the audience. It was ministers and C-level executives. And it was like, okay, so this is great. You've told us the what, because I was lucky to meet them in Dubai a few months prior. They wanted to know, well, how do we make money, right? I was lucky because in the room was the ministers, there was C-suite again. And I did my research before I went in. I spoke to a few people, and there's a country in the middle of a perfect storm, right? To your point, the regulator is driving digital transformation. They have limited regulatory barriers. They have a massive talent pool of technology, one of probably the biggest around the world, outside of Silicon Valley, probably in here, maybe London. Not only that, they're about to do open banking, right? So you got open banking. I've got a light regulator, a regulator driving digital transformation directly, and I've got a talent pool.
Yeah.
Like
Key ingredients.
I've got all the ingredients I need to make the perfect cake.
Yeah.
And you talk about liquidity and movement. I think that's going to be another reason why I think the UK will go back into the block. Because if you look at statistics now, the UK has a much older population. Because I always believed in Brexit, immigration will never be the problem. It'll be emigration. Emigration of talent will create an aging population.
Yeah.
And eventually that talent will move to those emerging markets for opportunity to do cool stuff, innovate, be valued. People think it's about tax. It's nothing to do with tax.
No.
That's just a value add. No. It's really about, do you get the opportunity to innovate and create, to make impact?
Yes.
That's what the younger generation want to do. And I think that's what everybody wants to do in our field.
Yeah.
If they're not, they're crazy. So I think that's the big difference. We talked about liquidity. Part of the issue is this concept of human capital, which I hate. Because unfortunately, all roads lead you to the financial statement. And unfortunately, you can tell me till I'm blue in the face or you're blue in the face that people are an asset, but that's not what the financial statement tells me. The P&L tells me they sit in the cost column.
Yes.
They don't actually sit in the asset column. Yes. And we all know when there's a chance to be efficient, be it because you have to, because of market conditions, or because we have a new technology, AI, I can save that column and bring the money down. But in doing so, second order, third impacts, I deteriorate the organization over time because I lose those abilities. Because one, I don't know what they can do. I can only know what they can do in the confines of their job. I have no idea what abilities they've built up over time, the relationships. Trading is easier because that's what makes a good trader, the relationships with people. In a business context, day to day, you might not know that. And then all of a sudden you bring a machine in that's going to rely on that individual to interpret the outputs, because realistically they're not outputs, they're inputs for the person to do that job in some cases. And then that person is going to go, that's not quite right.
Yeah.
It needs to be this. If that person is no longer sat there, that model doesn't improve as fast as it could, and you can't use anything that it creates. And also, who's going to explain what it does to the regulator? Because computer says no, doesn't fly with the regulator. So this is what I mean by human liquidity. It's not about cutting the workforce. It's not about redesigning. This time it is about redesigning the organization, but to create an abilities-led workforce that is multimodal and fluid, that can shift between roles where needed and adapt, which means the organization can adapt.
And so there we have it, the future of work, right?
Yeah, and in fact, but it starts much earlier.
Yeah.
It actually starts in education.
Yeah.
Which is nothing to do with work. It's about you putting the foundational abilities and moving to abilities-based learning, not memorization and passing tests. Yeah. Once you have those foundational abilities, when children move to the work environment, which will be very different when they do, that work environment, those abilities they were taught now become competencies. So they're already set up for that world. We're basically not teaching kids to get a job anymore.
No.
We're teaching them abilities to adapt Of course, they will pick domain-specific skills as they get older because that's how it works.
Yeah.
But they have the foundational abilities of critical thinking, reasoning, the ability to challenge, the ability to deal with change,
Yes.
which, by the way, most adults don't.
Yes.
Because they're never taught how.
Yes.
And that's why most change fails in an organization, because people deal with it in different ways.
You know, if schools created the ability to become Michael Clarks,
God help the world.
right? Little Michaels
My
running
parents
around.
would be very scared.
You know, I mean, just the conversation, I'm kind of trying to tie it up with, you know, your journey of being able to be that fluid, right? And therefore you've created liquidity in a different way. You've been able to create value. That value is added every single stage of your career to create something very tangible that you can market fundamentally. But you've, as you said, you've never been tied to an opportunity because of the money, right? You'd never be incentivized. If we lived in a world where everyone had a basket full of skills that, you know, you could add to any time, but you could also be static with, up to you, how ambitious you are. And the marketplace was, you know, based on, here's my basket of skills, dip into it as you need, right? So this I mean, we've talked about it, various people have talked about it in terms of that's the world we're moving to. So traditional careers become these boundary lines. The fluidity and the liquidity, it means that these boundary lines of traditional careers just don't exist. We are starting to see that, you know, and I think as founders and entrepreneurs, we have a big responsibility to actually, like you have, create comfort in traditional structures to allow for that.
And it's a reason, I think, because I've gone through that journey. Like, I have no degree of sorts. Most of the things I've done, I've learned how to learn in a way, which I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Because and it's not to a disservice to the education system, because so many people do well out of it.
Yeah.
For me, it just didn't fit.
Yeah.
But it gave me the ability to not be constrained either. So my thinking allowed me to just explore and be curious. How does that fit with this? And how does that work with this? If I read this, does it click with this? And suddenly you create Y.
Yeah.
Right? You go X, Y, Z gives you something else.
Yeah.
But that, when I was writing my book, it was like, okay, actually what's missing is the way we teach. So that led me to write the whole abilities learning model and schools curriculum for AI. So, but it's also based on cognitive development, because we can't just give a kid AI in the classroom. That's not the idea. But there's a time and a place. First of all, we got to let the brain develop and start teaching abilities we don't teach them today. Because then when they get to a certain age and they're given an AI, they have the ability then to know what's real. They can challenge it and they can leverage it to the full potential, but we've also unlocked the human potential in the individual, which is the real goal of this, right?
Yeah.
Because AI should be the partner to the human, not replace them.
Yes.
In doing so, there has to be an acceptance.
Yes.
The acceptance is the machine now owns knowledge and speed and pattern
Right.
matching, because I will never compete with a machine in terms of how much information I can consume, how much knowledge there is in the world for me to consume. Can't compete with that. Sorry, can't do it. What I can do is upskill the things that it doesn't have, right? Which is judgment, critical thinking, empathy, all of these other abilities, maybe 20 of them I've defined, that make us who we are. But there's a large portion of those we still don't use.
Yeah.
So there has to be a point where we're going to have to strengthen the ones each of us have individually, regain things that we may have lost because of technology. And there's going to be things that we don't have that we're going to learn from scratch. Data literacy is one of those, as well as AI literacy. We don't have those. Data literacy is the worst it's ever been in human history, right? So take all that into the mix. What we're really saying, if you map that to life stages, what you're saying between probably the age of 1 and 10, AI is in the classroom, but maybe a storyteller. So it works with a teacher who now is no longer a teacher, but a facilitator, right? So the example I constantly give in the curriculum...
Return of the metaverse.
Yeah, but true, right? But the example I gave in the curriculum is, okay, and in the work that I did, I also mapped it to the American rubrics so we could show how we can test for this in the classroom. But the example I always give is history. if you give like an 8-9-year-old history and say, well, there's two flavors of history, right? The flavor of today, go and memorize some linear dates, remember some individuals and write something and memorize it and pass a test and you've done history, right? Or I teach you about an aspect of history, you go home and I tell you to come back and tell me what you would do differently. Now you know everything about that historical event. That's very different. Because now the individual, the child, has to be resourceful. They have to come back and present an argument, which teaches them to debate, reason, think critically, judgment, all of those things. We don't ask them to do today. And now I unlock new brainwave capability, right, which is becoming weaker over time. But I still test for the same things as I would have done previously: grammar, punctuation, dates, relevance, etc. So you can imagine what that's like if you start applying that to other subject areas with those abilities, what that would mean, right? And then you introduce AI when they're about 10 or 11. And there's a reason for this, is because of frontal cortex development. Most children at a certain age don't know what's real. There's no point giving them AI because you then erode that even more. So you are building foundational muscle and ability, because the point is, once I'm able, I'm capable.
Yes.
Right. So you and I are capable of running the 100 meters. Different ways of doing it, but neither of us have the ability to win the 100 meters Olympics. Once we're able, it means I'm capable. So it means I have to teach people the abilities at a young age, so when they become adults, they're capable. And then when they move into the workforce, those abilities become competencies. And that is what's measured in the workforce. And then the human resources department is gone, and they become basically workforce capability and intelligence. They are responsible then for growing the capability. So evolving those abilities at a personal level for every individual. So those capabilities evolve in the organization, but that department is also responsible for the AI agent employees, which are also responsible for deploying capability. It radically changes the way the workforce is done. But then if you're combining AI then with the human who has those abilities, they suddenly become augmented and the workforce accelerates. Because the real advantage in a workforce is its people. We just don't measure it that way because our perception of value is skewed. Our perception of value is they're expensive because I can see them on the balance sheet. The finance department is telling me they cost too much. I've got 3 of those people, and the market's difficulty. We're not selling so much. Let's get rid of them. The reality is, if I invested in their capability and I understood the real value that they generated and it was captured somewhere and it was measurable, that would change the game and conversation of how we train people and how we think about personal development and learning development. And the important thing with children by doing that is because, look, in 2 years' time, you and I will have a conversation where it won't be about AI anymore. It'll be about quantum. It'll be about another technology. And how do we deal with this? Right? Versus I create a generation that can adapt regardless of the technology. They become multimodal. They have all the abilities that they will need. They're already ingrained as continuous learners, and they will literally evolve through life. Work with technology, challenge it, learn with it, and bring the best out of them. That's the model we should be building for the future generation, not trying to shoehorn AI into job titles. Because we're teaching kids today on jobs that won't exist in 3 years' time.
I mean, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, gone are job titles. I mean, fundamentally, continuous learning assumes that as soon as I've acquired and worked so hard for that job title, it's like potentially irrelevant or outdated. So much of what you say is kind of mind spinning, and you can see pockets of it in different phases as we sit here and now. We've got, rapid, like uncharted, wild horse running in terms of technology in the form of AI and its merry men, in all its guises, racing forward, and all of the dysfunction that's created, both at a consumer and at a enterprise level. I feel like we've got probably more of a chance of getting it right in the enterprise because there's been so much friction in adoption, which means actually we haven't done too much damage. So, but at a consumer level, I mean, we have kids learning AI and whether they're ready for it or not, using ChatGPT. So we've kind of mucked up this kind of early phase a little bit.
Well, we always do. And the problem you're going to have is, are we going to be in a position in 3 years' time where we now do what we do to AI to what's happening with social media around the world right now, where it's being banned?
Yes.
It's being banned for anybody under the age of 16.
Yeah.
Right? That's a failure of how it was launched.
100%.
With lack of guide rails.
100%.
Right? With the right guide rails, with the right abilities for children to use this and the appropriate time to use it, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
My worry is we don't treat this as a catalyst moment. We don't actually look at this and go, do you know what? Those things don't work as we thought they did. They did 20 years ago, maybe, not right now.
Yeah.
So how do we evolve? Like the whole universal basic income conversation is lazy, right? If you've got the intelligence to create AI, why don't you have the innovation to redesign the economic model? No, because the easy option is to give everybody a check and tell them to go home.
Yeah.
Right? But then even then that doesn't help, because the measurement of the productivity still hasn't been adjusted.
Well, and this is the kind of big vacant look people have, when you hear Elon talking about, AI and the future of universal basic income, and we'll be free, we'll have all this free time and we'll still earn. And people are like, what do we do with our time? And what kind of social dysfunction does that? Because everyone needs a purpose, right?
Exactly.
Fundamentally, humans need continuous learning. That is a sense in another way of purpose, right?
Yeah.
And tying that up to the future of work, I'm just a simple person. Like you, I have been driven by things that interest me. And sometimes what that means, most of the time, that means I don't fit very well in boxes in a career. So I've had to create a way of working where I can provide capability when it's needed, but still get enjoyment from what I want and get, learn and feel fulfilled. Now, if that was just normal, if we could turn the model around where I've got a set of skills and I continue to learn, and they're on that shop shelf, storefront, whatever, and they're relevant, and so people want them, and so I'm always occupied, by choice. What a different way of working.
But if you notice and if you look at all the people saying about universal basic income, it's all the engineers, right? It's because it's a faster way to implement the technology.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to deal with the complexity of the economic model.
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to create a sustainable society, then you evolve the economic model. And the technology just becomes part of society.
Yeah.
The time when technology is defines society, that's a massive problem for me, because that means that we've outsourced so much to technology, we've become 100% reliant on it.
Yeah.
You mentioned financial inclusion in the early part of the conversation, never been solved, right? Data inclusion will be even worse, tenfold, right? Why? Because it takes PPP to solve it. Public and private partnership is the key to solve it, but we've never gone down that road, right? So you can forget UBI. Well, how am I going to get UBI if I don't have access to a mobile device and I don't have access to the internet because where I live doesn't have connectivity?
Yeah.
And how do I let emerging markets or nations that may not have access to the technology and participate? Because what they bring adds more value to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Honestly, I look at them as someone who has worked in technology. I find it embarrassing and lazy answers by engineers. And it's not to disservice to engineers, because I'm talking more so much the people who are responsible for the direction of this stuff, is that the fastest route to travel is to tell everybody, don't stop us. This is where we're going. Yeah. Unfortunately, everybody's going to be displaced, and this is the answer. Yeah. Well, the real answer, unfortunately, is more difficult, but it's in the long run, it's more successful. Because the other thing that I think is also emerging out of this is how hard leadership is becoming in organizations. Look at the noise now your average CEO has to deal with compared to 20 years ago. Also look at the tenure of a CEO. It's almost like a football manager in the Premier League or, a Spanish league. It's almost like 3 years now, something ridiculous, which means that not many leaders will put a vision in that outlives them.
Yeah.
So you end up with short-termism.
But like our political systems.
Exactly. Well, yeah, to a degree, right? Outside of this economy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a problem.
Yeah.
The other problem is, for whatever reason, leaders are not looking at the second and the third order effects of their decision. They're only looking at what's in front of them. They don't really understand or don't look at, well, if I do this, what's the Jenga and domino effect I kick off that I might not see in a year, but in 3 years' time, it's going to put me in this spot, right? So that's a problem. And also the way we teach leaders is a problem, because we're not teaching them to be system thinkers, which is where that second order impact comes in. We're not teaching them about the human element in the heart of this. There's like, I wrote about it the other day, there's like a whole framework of the abilities I've described that would be for school that are also applicable to leadership in the modern age. So we are creating leaders out of MBAs and other training that leaders go on, which is based on the world that was.
That was.
Not the world that is and the world that is going to be. And we're expecting those poor leaders to be able to lead their businesses into an environment that is no longer the same as it was yesterday, let alone 3 months ago.
Yep.
So we talk about designing the organization, but at the end of the day, we also have to think about what a leader is today and what abilities they need to be able to make that transition. So, for example, I can train you as a leader on all of these things, but if you go back to the environment and the environment doesn't change, then how are you going to apply those things?
Yeah.
You can't, right?
No, absolutely
So
not.
if the culture cannot change, or you don't have the facility to change the culture, and I would argue even people lower than the leader. So if I'm going on workforce training and I go for a 3-day workshop and they teach me all this great stuff, I go back to my desk and my work environment doesn't allow me to apply those things, well, guess what? I've forgotten. That was a waste of time.
Yeah.
My friends sometimes refer to this as learning theater.
Yeah.
Right? It's learning for the sake of being seen to be doing something, but I haven't got the culture to apply it.
100%.
So in line with transforming what work looks like, leadership also has to evolve to enable that to happen. And sometimes that also has to be for shareholders and stakeholders, because the other problem is, and I feel for leaders because their spotlight is on them. It's like, if I do something wrong, the brand of the business is impacted. If I do something wrong, my personal reputation is affected. My shareholders, my stakeholders, my customers. You end up in a place where everybody becomes risk averse. And we don't see much innovation in a business because it carries too much risk. On top of that, you throw in tenure, right? Which means, I've got a vision, but maybe I'll just do a little bit because at least I can show I delivered something before I move on.
Yeah.
But then that comes down to, and I've seen examples of this where people put golden handcuffs on people and say, you don't leave until this is done.
Yeah.
Or we just reward differently.
Yeah.
We reward for impact.
Yeah.
And then that gets rid of the ego of not seeing things through.
Yeah.
Because in a way they shouldn't. Legacy is what you leave behind.
Yeah.
And then that just gets built up over time. So we have to rethink the way that our leaders are trained through institutions for the intelligence age, because that's where we're heading, but also then how the environment evolves and how we rethink work and how we rethink the way we teach. It's a complete circle and cycle that has to be done. But like everything, you don't tackle the elephant. You can start with a school as an example. You can take a class as an example. You can do this incrementally because this is going to be a journey. We're exposing big topics, and big topics don't get tackled overnight.
No.
They have to be done incrementally in the right way, so we transition incrementally. Because if we tackled this all at once, we would all fail and it would be a disaster and we'd all go home.
Fundamentally, that is why, and I stick to it, and I probably will always stick to it like you, believe that you need parallel systems.
Yeah.
This is why the promise of, fintech and what it achieved out of all the industries, financial services, and this strength of companies that have become, in the case of Revolut, more valuable than Barclays. But imagine that every large organization had this, for want of a better words, playpen, but it was permanent. Okay, it was a functional area. You've spent much of your career in building and benefiting from that, but there was organizational, space where experimentation was needed, expected, and encouraged. And I don't see any other way but to actually have that, where you have, your kind of traditional structure with all the, restrictions and regulation and compliance as is. But over time, you have the ability for off-ramps, into fluidity and new ideas.
I do this with leaders all the time with AI, alongside what we've been describing around the workforce transformation, is that, and it stems from, well, not stems from this, but I remember a really interesting conversation with, again, a CEO from Moldova, that part of the world. Again, all the pressures in the world to do AI. And he said to me, because I made a comment about we don't build solutions looking for problems. And he rightly challenged me and said, well, with AI, it might just be opportunities. We might not have problems. A good point. He said, I feel like I should go all in. What should I do? And I said to him, well, first of all, you should only really go in on your decision, right? By that, I mean, you're making a communication to the business and the outside world to say that we are fully adopting AI as a principle, as a strategy. I don't believe in an AI strategy, but part of the business strategy, right? But don't go all in on the implementation.
Yeah.
Because that'd be stupid. That's like going into a casino and putting your entire income on red.
Yeah.
Don't take this the wrong way, but the easiest all-in decision you can make is that's the direction of travel you want to go. The way you deploy it, though, that investment is incremental.
Yeah.
One use case at a time. Because really, what are you doing when you do that is you're building your capability incrementally until you get to a point where AI is across the business and you've proven your intent. And it's a bit like transforming the workforce. Do exactly the same thing. You pick an area, you pick a number of abilities that you feel those people are going to need, and then you train them and then you apply them.
Yeah.
And then they maybe would use that with AI. They may be using it without AI, but you can, and then you measure it and they become competencies, and then it just grows organically through the business until it's exactly the way that digital transformation was done. In that case, sometimes it was done moving the business from processes to customer journeys to value streams, right? And eventually the business, it moves from being organized around process to journeys to value stream structures, much more lean and much more efficient. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Happens incrementally in any business. The biggest decision you'll ever make in one go is the decision to do it and communicate it and back that vision, but then incrementally and bring the business with you and your stakeholders and your shareholders, right?
Wow, Michael, we're going to, we could be here for hours. I mean, literally, I cannot believe how the time's gone. So I just want to tackle two more things with you in the time we've got left. So perhaps we can talk about the city we live in. What do you think? What does it symbolize? It's no accident we're here. I'm very philosophical about life. I think, wow, what do you think being in, let's talk broader, let's talk this part of the world. What do you think this is teaching us? What is our message for founders that are still committed to working in this part of the world through so much change and so much uncertainty? And then I want to hear, I'm sure most people do, but a little bit about your book and what you've got planned next.
Okay, yeah. The one I'm still writing. The second one. For this part of the world, if you exclude the geopolitical stuff that's going on and the day-to-day, I don't think it's uncertainty. I don't think that's the right word. I think it's just direction it's heading. You could say that's uncertainty, but I think uncertainty means we don't know. And that's not the truth. The reality is we're over-communicated to, which is a great thing. In terms of where my view of where Dubai will go in the UAE has not changed. If anything, it's just reinforced what I believe. The people who are still here, I think, are, one, they trust the environment. They believe in the direction of where it's going, but they also feel part of it. Yeah. I'm like a born builder, right? And that's really what I do. Yes, I can be academic, and yes, I can write stuff, and yes, I can speak to boards, but my fulfillment comes by helping people build stuff, be it through transforming or building actual products and playing a role. And I couldn't be in a better environment because everybody wants you to win.
Yeah.
It's a very strange feeling coming from working across the world that I'm lucky to have done, where I feel there's no ceiling here. Whereas everywhere I've been, I feel there's a ceiling, and that's as far as I can go. Well, the reality is that's not the case.
Yeah.
That's just how far the ecosystem would allow me to go.
Yeah.
Whereas where there's no ceiling, and I think there's only 2 countries in the world that I know, and maybe more, that has a 10-year vision. And if you were going to say to any economy around the world and democracy, this is an example of how powerful a vision is. Right? We talk about boom and bust economies in politics. That's part of the problem. There's no vision. So that we talk about a business having a vision. It's laughable that a democracy doesn't have a vision for its nation.
Yeah.
Like you land in Dubai airport and you understand completely the principles of the country, and you immediately understand where it's going. And we're fortunate enough that what we do aligns with that vision, which allows you to meet the right people because you have something of value to bring.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it will grow and grow and grow. If it didn't have a vision, you might question things. But as far as I know, that vision hasn't changed. If in fact it's just been reinforced.
Yeah.
And the fact that it has such allies, but also such networks. So a reason for coming here was, and it's kind of worked out, it's kind of panning out this way, was also an economic decision, not to save tax, but was more so, where is the world going economically? That was my decision. So I looked at the UK and I looked at Europe, and I assumed that they would be in recession at a certain point. How much? Who knows? A lot of that was based on where my clients were at the time, because I moved with MasterCard. So I'm kind of looking about where my clients are, where my work is, what is it saying to me. Then I looked at other markets around the world, and I could see dips, but not as big. So where I looked at Dubai, I thought, well, actually, the future of the world will be driven by emerging markets. So I have Dubai. I'm very short top away to Africa, next billion users.
Yeah.
I'm very close to South America, but not close, but close as I would be than the UK, which again is an emerging market, or at least a merging set of markets. And then you've also got, I'm very close to Eastern Europe, which for me is an emerging market.
Yeah.
I never factored in the US as a market for me personally, but it's turned out that way. Not all of America, more the Valley, that sort of area. And also don't forget Asia.
Of course. Yeah.
So more Singapore, Hong Kong versus China. So if you look at that geographical footprint and where the acceleration is going to be, but also, as we said at the start of this conversation, with emigration in your mind, where's the talent going to be?
Yeah.
Well, the talent is going to be around here.
Yeah.
Whether it's here or it's going to be in the markets that are around it. If you imagine this as a circle and this is the outer circle, the outer circle markets are close in proximity for anybody to fluidly move.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
I'm not that I'm not nervous about what's going on, but I'm aware of what's going on. But at the end of the day, it's not forever.
Yeah.
But what I do know is the world will be very different when it ends, for different reasons and different factors. What I'm more confident about is where I live at least has a vision that hasn't changed
100%.
and has direction. And more importantly, the role of government is to protect its citizens.
Yeah.
And this is what this place does. So that, again, gives me the confidence.
Amazing. Totally agree. I think every founder that is still here has made a commitment for all those reasons and more, and more. I mean, there's policies and structures and accessibility, the ease of fluidity in the ecosystem. I'm still very new here, but I think those are very tangible benefits. You can get to people. And you said something very important there, that people want you to win. That is not said enough. And yet in so many places, the opposite is true. everything, we talked about your example of a startup and a procurement cycle. And I mean, you have so much set against you, and brilliant minds need to be given the platform to shine. And I do feel that is, in all intents and purposes, you can create you can be a new you almost every day here.
Yeah.
I feel there's like a new page turned over every day here, if you really wanted to, if you're sane enough to do that. Now, tell us about Michael, the author, and that avatar, and what have you got planned, and where can people find you, come and hear from you, listen to you?
So 2 things. So obviously book 1, not obviously, but for book 1 is done and out and published last November. Book 1 was a 3-4 year journey that went through a million different titles. You'll find me on different podcasts with a different title. Try to keep a straight face. But the reason it took so long is because all of the things that I've just defined and described, I had to create.
Right.
I had to find a way to turn data into a real world asset, which I know we haven't had a chance to talk about. So I had to figure that out. I had to figure out how we change the way we teach, how the way we work. I had to think about the way we reclassify AI, all of these things, and how we would even exchange value in this world, right? And how we would recognize it, how we would certify it, how we would rate it, how we would govern it. All of that had to be figured out. But then the book itself took about 6 months to write because it had to be written in a way that everybody in the world would understand, from a 14-year-old up to an 8-year-old. So I wrote it as a fable. So I wrote it as The Alchemist, but all the facts were embedded. Think of this book as the what and the why, with a little bit of how to be dangerous. But the how wasn't the important bit. It was to wake people up and say, and the book was called Our Moment for a reason, not because it was a cool title, because I felt like this is a moment of a sort of crossroads of where we take things. And so it was written in the style of The Alchemist, with a little bit of cinematography thrown in and sprinkled in, to basically the average person to say, well, I didn't know these were the things we missed with technology that we could have had. I didn't know this is where we could go. And maybe that's what I would like. Yeah. But of course, that then left the door ajar in a way. And the feedback was really interesting. So the people who knew nothing loved the book. The people who knew way too much and were too close to me hated it, because they were expecting me to give them the how and everything else in between. So I'm having to write the how, which is not as in, that's not the right word. It is enjoyable because it's resurrecting what we had. The older version was never put into practice because the version of the book that I wrote wouldn't have reached so many people if I'd have kept it like that. So the book I'm in the middle of writing now, which hopefully will be out, it's looking like it'll be ready by May, June, is the reclassification of the economy.
Right.
So I'm basically building on the work of Adam Smith and all of the economists that followed him in reclassifying the pillars, and then redefining the new ones, defining what the new world order could look like, and then what the future looks like. So this is really an economics book for policymakers and government, right, around what, in more depth of what we talked about today, which even includes what is an economy. So we use that term and I don't think we know what it means today. So it's the whole reclassification of the whole thing, soup to nuts. Probably not for the average 14-year-old.
No.
This is for a much more, this is for the audience to implement change.
Yeah.
The book was for those to want change.
Ideate
and think of what it could mean for them personally. This is for those who now who are facing into this and maybe would want some direction. Where to find me?
Where to find you?
Where to find me? Causing damage on LinkedIn generally. But I do have a website, so michaelclark.ai, obviously, which you can find me in terms of services I offer, where I speak and what keynotes and topics and things like that. And there is a newsletter I publish at least 3 times a week on different topics related to the economy, bits and pieces. So you can find me there.
Amazing. And I want to kick myself, but I think there's another podcast in the making in terms of, data as an asset class, because that is a minefield and a really juicy topic.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you. It's just been thrilling as usual. And yeah, nearly 2 hours of, a little chat.
Exactly.
So I'm going to sign off. I'm going to thank the audience for joining us in this conversation. I feel absolutely, wholeheartedly that we'll have another one very soon, and ask Michael to go into a little bit more detail on the topic of data as an asset, because I think that's a super exciting and very meaningful topic. So what a way to kind of set the scene. I think the timing is impeccable. So good on both of us.
Exactly.
What a time to be alive. And look out. The series is just kicking off. We've got a really fascinating pipeline of talent and great minds and fresh voices, as I say, lined up. So until the next one, take care, everyone.